to the Only One Mike podcast. Carl Gerard is in the building. Brooklyn Dre and J. Rob is off tonight. But I'm joined by author, psychotherapist, creator and host of the Zestful Agent podcast, Miss Nicole Christina. How you doing, Nicole?
I'm doing really well, and I'm really happy to be here with you.
Oh, I'm happy that you're here with me, too. We want to talk about how we got this thing that we got going on together tonight. I read your book, and I'm showing, folks don't see this, but I'm showing Nicole that I am a purchaser of the book.
Yeah.
All right. And it's called Not Just Chatting, How to Become a Master Podcast Interviewer. Now, when you start this journey, and Nicole, you know this as well, I have like a whole library here of books on podcasting, podcast marketing. A lot of them can get long-winded. Bottom line is, your book cut straight to the bone. And it was in a language that you get it right away. And we could tell that when you read this book, and I suggest that anybody that's in podcasting read this book, it talks about pretty much the journey of going through podcasting. It tells us things like, don't worry about the numbers, just grow your audience. How many years did it take you to grow your audience for Zestful Agent?
I'm on, 5 years plus, and I'm still looking to grow, right. And as I think it can be a process that I don't know how it is for you, but it is the long game. This isn't like, it's not an overnight success. It's like a dribble success.
Yeah. Indeed.
And I think people need to know that going in. This isn't going to make you rich overnight, and it's not going to make you a celebrity. It is such a wonderful thing, and I love it so much.
Yes.
But it can be a grind. It's a lot of work. People don't realize you put out a half an hour show, you're looking at 3 hours of, production work.
You're right. And that's one of the things in the book that resonated with me when you said that. I'm like, she's right. Because I could do a 40-minute episode that might take me 2 hours to edit.
That's right.
Now, when you edit your episodes, right? Are you looking?
Well, I don't.
You don't.
But I have someone who does.
You have someone who does, and maybe they're just as particular as I am with edits. I'm taking out all the ums and ahs and air and everything. And a lot of times people tell you, like, don't do that. Just leave it the way it is. Keep it organic. But just me being me, it's like I want everything to sound flawless. And so that's what I do. So let me ask you, how did you get into podcasting? What was the thing that brought you into it?
Well, I've been a psychotherapist for 30 years, and I started noticing that my clients were, getting older right along with me. And so I did I wanted to do some web training, and I hired a tech assistant, and I did some web training on Zestful Aging and mindful eating and some of the things that psychotherapists like to think and talk about. And he said to me off the cuff, we were getting these things ready to launch. And he said, I think you'd really like podcasting because, you like to talk to people and you have this message. Well, me being me, the next day I showed up to my friend's house with my little laptop, who I had really admired her because she's a fly fisher person, and she's a guide. I live in upstate New York, so there's a lot of
New York is in the
lakes. Well, I was born downstate.
Yeah.
So. All right.
Yeah, I got you.
And she did some work volunteering for women who had cancer, and she took them out on these rivers and streams, which are, of course, beautiful and serene places, and taught them how to cast.
Right.
And I thought, how cool is that? So I said, I'm coming over with my laptop, and as she was talking, she's a very articulate woman, and she's talking about her passion for fishing, and she's a woman in a male dominated sport and all this juicy great stuff. It was like I was bitten, and I was like, I don't care how this happens, I got to do more of this. It was just so fun, and I And it was, different than being a therapist in that I wasn't trying to like figure out, how can I help this person? What's going on with them? What's their history? What their symptoms? It was asking questions just because I wanted to learn more. I was curious. It was fun. And so like after that day, it was just like I got bit by the bug.
Yeah.
And my editor gives me so much grief because he's like, you simply cannot interview 3 people a week. If you're only dropping once a week, the math just does not add up. But I find it to be, it's just such a, it's sort of addicting for me and I love it. And it's hard for me to turn people down who have these stories that I never imagined I would be able to talk to people. Like I just interviewed Gigi Fernandez and she's a tennis player. She is viewed as the best doubles tennis player in history. She's from Puerto Rico. I'm like, and I'm a tennis player and I'm like, I get to talk to Gigi Fernandez and ask her anything I want. This is just like a dream come true.
Oh, you was probably just over the moon about that.
I was nervous and I play tennis, so I was going to send it out to my tennis people and just, you get to talk to people and then they find out, even though they might be famous or have written these really influential books, they'll just chat and as you well know, you make this connection and you're like, wow, they're just human like everyone else.
You said good interviews have a way of leaving both you and your guests energized, enriched, and feeling connected. We get to talk to different people, like I'm talking to you today, and I talk to different people from all over and all different walks of life. And even though you may not agree with everything someone says, somewhere within that conversation is something that you can both come to a common ground about. And I guess that's where the connection comes in, is what you're saying. Like we will always find something that's a common ground that we agree on.
I think that's really true. People have such different backgrounds, and I try to make it not to be all about upstate New York. I really try to get international folks, which can be tricky with the time change. I had a person in New Zealand. I literally, my brain just melted when she said, I'm an 11 and a half hours ahead of you. I'm like, what? How does that even work? So like I try to make it much more, that's a challenge and it's something that I'm really deliberately trying, but like to bring people from all walks of life and to find that connection. And that feels really good. And I think audiences are just starving for that right now.
Being a psychotherapist for what, it was like over 30 years now? Is it?
Yeah.
Am I saying over? I don't want to put more on it.
You can say over.
Is it over 30 years?
1992 is when I started. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, does that make interviewing people easier? Because you can kind of let down the psychotherapist portion and just be yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm just really interested in people.
Right.
So whatever I'm doing, I guess that's sort of what motivates me. It's easier than doing psychotherapy in some ways.
Right.
But I don't want, like some people will get emotional if we're talking about things that are difficult, like aging or aging parents or this. And I have to not like go there with them, I'm not their therapist and I'm not there to like, help them with their grief.
But is it hard for you to not do it?
Sometimes,
yeah.
But I have to do that. I have to discipline myself and know like, that's not what I'm here for. And the thing I really try to do is wonder, and it's hard sometimes, but wonder what does my audience want to hear? And I talk about that in the book, like, I could totally go down these rabbit holes of nerdy stuff that nobody cares about except me. And so I have to stop myself and be like, what does my, 45 to 65-ish, progressive, whatever, person. And then I have some younger folks too. Like, what do they want to hear? And I have to kind of take myself out of the equation because I have sometimes a little bit, like I'm a little eccentric in some ways.
No way. Not you. No way. Do you feel the same way as a podcaster that sometimes you'll put out shows that you think are informative. And again, I'm a person that I'm trying, Nicole, not to study numbers, not to look at, well, this show did well and this one didn't.
Oh, yeah.
And that, if you do that, folks, it would drive you crazy.
It drive you crazy because there's no rhyme or reason.
Right. So I could put out a conversation about something that happened, some unknown history fact. Speak to a person who is a descendant of this person.
Okay.
Right. And it's like, okay, well, why is this numbers different than me talking about something that happened in sports?
Oh.
It's like we talked earlier before the show, is that it's hard to kind of adjust because I feel like information is something that needs to get put out. And I know you want to kind of speak to your audience, but then there's that part of you that says, do I kind of dumb down the information to just keep up with current events? Or like, what do you do? I mean, I believe that everything has its place in its time.
I think that's a really, that really speaks to me, Carl. You're talking about something I've really wondered, and this whole dumbing down. Like, I don't do really makeup or diets or stuff like that. That's just not, like, other people do that better. Mm-hmm. But what I sacrifice are numbers, because anytime I put anything up about healthy or weight, anything that's about like nutrition, my numbers are like, wow. Right. But I don't want to give into that. I don't want it to be like fluff, right? Yeah. And so that's the price you pay. I think you're going to get a smaller audience if you have people who are doing stuff that isn't that kind of cotton candy type of theme. You know?
And that's what I talk, a lot with my co-host, my guys. Right? They're actually, Brooklyn Dre is actually my blood brother, and J. Rob, we all pretty much came up together. So we often talk about that. Is that, do we just go with the flow, which we all agreed that we're not going to do that, no matter what. We're not going to do that, because we had a guest one time, and she said to us, she said, you guys, your currency is the giving and exchanging of information. And I always kind of base the show around that. I'm learning from you, and in turn, the audience is learning from all of us. You'll tell me something that I might not know anything about. So I'm on the computer and I'm looking, I'm researching, and that's what we kind of hope that the audience do. Don't you think so?
That's what I hope the audience, boy, this is such a tough one. I think people have such short attention spans.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And you know what I mean? And I am aware that I'm never going to be the number one podcast on aging, because I don't do that kind of stuff that is super popular. Right. But I don't want to. So, no. I'm like kind of a little bit stuck. Yeah. Could I sort of think about, who can I get, who sort of the clickbaity type idea. That's not who I am. And it sounds like that's not who you are either. So I have to kind of live with the consequences that I'm interested in people. Like, I have this woman. Mm-hmm. This is one of my favorite examples. She's a movie actress in her name is Sandy Fish, and she's done a whole lot of stuff. And what she does for fun is teach hospice skills to people in San Quentin who are aging and whose cellmates are terminally ill. This is what she does for fun. And she says, I could go to these celebrity parties with my buddies and all these people. I have no interest in doing that. Mm-hmm. So she's all about justice and different kinds of justice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is just, for me as a social worker, that just floats my boat. Now, other people might be like, I want to know more about what kind of, makeup she wears. That's not my show. And I think it's, it's sort of like PBS versus, I don't know what.
Yeah, like MTV or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the struggle, is that I'm not willing to do that, but then I don't get these millions of people.
And anybody out there that is into podcasting and starting a show, stick true to what you know. If that celebrity gossip thing or whatever is your thing, then that's your niche and you stick with it. But if you are like, Nicole and myself, and then, we don't want to kind of conform to that and we have our own way of approaching this thing, then use that approach. I
think that's such good advice because I just recently, I haven't had this problem a lot, but I just recently had somebody who wanted to be on the show because free publicity, blah, blah, blah. And, it sort of sounded good on paper, but I just wasn't resonating. Yes. And I thought, what am I doing here? This is my podcast. Why am I going to sacrifice this? It's such a privilege to do this. Why am I going to bring someone on that I'm lukewarm about?
Right. And that's a good point that you brought up, is like you had to turn some people down.
It's hard.
It's hard. And it's not that it's something that, what I normally tell them, Nicole, is that if you say, for instance, my show is not a music show. I'm not the type that's going to review albums or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I have to let you know that. So I've had people say, well, can you bring this artist on? Okay, but we're not a music show. It's not a music program. But if your artist comes on, we might talk about an issue that's actually something that's impactful to, the community or anything like that, Now, I can't say I listened to your album. I can't say, I can promote something I never listened to, but that's just the exchange. However, a lot of times people say, all right, well, it's all right. Or I can pass on that because if I pass on that particular topic, then I can talk to people like you, Mm-hmm. And this is more like the wheelhouse that we're in.
I can tell by your podcasts that you're really trying to do more thinking pieces, get people considering maybe different perspectives, bringing maybe social issues out to discuss. And that's why I wanted to be on your podcast, because I thought, wow, this is a lot like mine in a way where you have a wide variety of topics and they're intelligent, right? They're like, this is important to us and let's talk about it. And that's, to me, that's like the gold.
Yes. And I know, I thank you for that. I thank you for that. So, let me ask you this, okay? You already explained the why you got into podcasting. Okay. Do you remember what your first show was like? How did you feel when you first got on that microphone? I know you were saying that you had like this. You got bit by the bug, but were you
bit by the bug?
Yeah, were you nervous when you first put something out to the world? Like,
God, are you kidding? Like an hour before I was prepping, and you know how when you first start out, you have everything written down, and you're like, I had a checklist about make sure you hit this button, make sure you hit record. I have had times back in the day where I forgot to hit record, and
I've done that too.
So embarrassing.
It is.
Oh my God, you feel so dumb. Oh my gosh. And I had some music that was kind of corny, and I had an intro that was, it's just not, it wasn't like juicy. It was just a beginner, thing. And I go back, and then the other thing I did, such a newbie mistake. I was so excited to have a guest on that I would like to try to ask them every possible question. Right. They're like, oh my God, let me go. I got stuff to do. So I would like milk it as much, and I couldn't believe they were talking to me. And after a while, I realized I am way over my sweet spot here. I got to cut this down.
Yeah, your ideal spot, I know you're saying in the book, is what, like 30 to 40 minutes or so?
Well, they used to say back before the pandemic is you want to do it the time of a commute, which was about 20 to 30 minutes. And I just played with it a little bit. My podcast is also broadcast on public radio in Syracuse. Oh. They only want 28 minutes. They don't care how good it is or how, who you're talking to. 28 minutes cut and dry because they have station identification. So I've gone a little bit better at, cutting it. It feels very different than the back in the day when we were spending half the day together.
Yeah. Now you got to tell me, because this is probably every podcaster's dream, if you will. Maybe. Depends on who you are. How did you pull off getting on a radio station? How did you pull off getting your show?
A lot of people ask me that. I'm a huge a PBS nerd, first of all.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I'm like, I contacted them and they were like, no. In fact, I couldn't even get through their wall. I went to the WCNY, which is our local one. Mm-hmm. And I'm painting over writing this great white paper about why I should be. I did the demographics. It's going to bring them more money. I mean, on and on and on.
Yeah.
I wrote a small dissertation. I could not get through the CEO's, wall, right? Because it was like spam for them. And then I got asked to be on WCNY, a show about aging as an expert. And then I just kind of wouldn't leave them alone. I mean, my luckily or whatever, my subject matter is really starting to get a lot of attention. Zestful aging well, because the demographic is such that you can't ignore it. So I think that they saw me as like, okay, our people will respond to this, but it was luck and just tenaciousness like a bulldog. And, I just tried every possible contact. And when I would talk to people who were like, there was this big fancy professor at Stanford I talked to, and he was interviewed all the time. And I said, my dream is to get on public radio. And he said, well, next time I get interviewed, I'll put a word in. So any chance I got, I was like, I want to be on public radio. Right. And then finally they just relented and said, well, we have, we're starting podcasts now off of our station. And so, finally you can do it and leave us alone.
So I imagine that it's easier on the station. I've always thought this is because we have this. We save you so much money.
Oh, maybe. You know what I do? And he thanks me profusely. I give him a Canva. I give him the wave. And I give him we call it the descriptor, just like the thing. And in an email, he listens, I think, just for, to make sure it's okay.
Right.
He doesn't really do anything.
You don't have to do anything. You get your own guests.
Yeah, that's right.
You do all your own descriptions, your own editing. Any radio station would be crazy not to take this. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I listen to your podcast, I listened to a few episodes of your podcast, and I'm like, wow, you actually do have that whole radio NPR thing going.
I told you I want to be the Terry Gross of it. Believe me, I've contacted them too. Yeah, I've got this thing. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I just love it so much. And I have, I put so much of my heart into it that I just expect other people, if I can put it out in front of them, that they might appreciate it. And I really just am, merciless. I was standing in line. My husband's like, oh my God, we were traveling and there was a guy in line. We were registering for our hotel room, and he was talking about something with his partner that was somewhat in the vague realm of aging. And I said, I'm a podcaster and I have my card. Anywhere I go, I have a card.
That's important.
And I think that's important. And I found really interesting places. The airport, I've overheard people say, oh, I love listening to podcasts. And if it's not too awkward, I was sitting next to someone. I said, "Oh, I'm a podcaster," and they take my card, and and they may listen or they may not. I don't know.
But according to the book, I remember you saying that, and it shows that you mean business.
Yeah,
that you're not just saying I have a podcast, because everybody is saying that these days, but it shows that
right.
I have a brand. Like this is, you go check this out and you see what I'm about. So that's one of the things that I took away from it too, as well. Speaking of the book,
yeah,
what prompted you to write this book? Did you just see this and say, you know what, I got something to say in regards to how to interview people? Did you read any other books and say, you know what, this is not it right here. This is not it.
I read other books that I thought were good. I thought because I had a background in psychotherapy, I might be able to offer something a little bit different. And that is what you talked about before, which is really trying to offer an experience, not data, not info, but like a connective experience that people would really appreciate. And I was going through a hard time personally. I have a son who's really an adult son who's really struggling. And I think it was a great distraction for me. Mm-hmm. And, I think that, it was something I had always wanted to do. I thought it would be fun and I thought it would be different. It's like, because people, as I'm sure everyone thinks they can podcast. Right. And it's not just, you're not just like good at talking to people. It's a real skill to be an interviewer, as you know. And I thought, hey, if I can share some of what I've learned, that would be kind of fun. So and it's opened a lot of doors, even you reaching out to me, and I've been able to be on conferences and say, well, I wrote this book. So it's kind of a thing that gives you a bit of credibility.
Yeah. And I never continued that story about how this whole thing hooked up.
That's right.
Yeah. Folks, I read the book. And normally I don't do this all the time, but you had your email address in the back of this book. Yeah. And when I finished reading the book, I sat there and I'm like, wow, like this was some really good information.
Aww.
And I said, I'm just going to email her and say thank you.
That was so kind and so appreciated.
Yeah. And, normally you think, well, it's a solicitation and all of that. Like, no. I just wanted to genuinely say thank you. What took me aback was when you said, do you want to come on? You want me to come on the show and discuss it? I was like, wow, I really didn't have to work for this one. I'm like, okay, this is actually saying thank you. But of course, of course. And then after seeing your YouTube and listening to your show, I said, this is definitely a person I would love to speak to because she just has such a nice voice and a good, good spirit about her. So I said, well, definitely have you on the show. So it goes to show you folks, if you got somebody that you're fond of and they work, reach out to them. You never know what happens. Do you have, what is it like when you book your guests? I know I have a certain way that I do it. And I know you definitely touched on it in the book about the follow up and everything like that. Can you tell the audience, how do you go about doing it?
I do this, and it has sort of for me, there's an emotional piece or a psychological piece. I want them to know they are in really good hands, that I have done this a lot before, and they know if they've searched me that I'm a therapist, and that scares people. So what I do is I send a PDF to them. I say, you have to wear headphones. You can't be on for my platform, I use Lisbon, and you have to be on a laptop or a computer. And I have a little bit of a legal thing that I borrowed from somebody else that says, you're giving me permission to use this and all of this stuff. I want it to be a little bit like business-likey, a little bit formal, so they know when they come on, I'm totally like a pro. Right. And whenever I have any communication with them, I try to make it really professional. I want them to know what to expect. We usually run 30 minutes. It's audio only. We're heard. This is who you're going to be speaking to, which people really, what I found is I've said, look, these are my people. And then they will kind of tailor their interview to my audience, which is great. Yeah. So I I make it like really easy for them because everyone's really busy, So that's kind of how I do it. Now, I'm very fortunate in that now I don't really have to look for guests. They are soliciting me. But one of my little secrets that I'll share with your audience is one of my best tricks was that when I get somebody I like and I interview them, we have this nice rapport. I always ask them at the end, is there anybody you would recommend who would be a great guest? And I've gotten a lot of enthusiasm for that and a lot of great guests, and you're already vetted. So when I contact them, I could say, oh, Johnny Johnson sent me, and then they'll open the email instead of like, who's this Zestful Agent chick? I don't even know who you are, lady.
Right.
Delete. So you already have a little bit of an in. And then I say, like, Johnny recommended you for my podcast and said you were a great talker and knew a lot about XYZ. And so it gives you some, whatever you want to call it, like a little bit of like credibility.
Little credibility to it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of guests, it's a good segue to the next question. Who do you think was your most fascinating guest to date?
Gosh,
I don't want to put you on the spot, Nicole, but I don't want to put you. All right, you might not want to say the guest name, maybe the topic.
Okay.
Yeah, how about the topic?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, okay. This one you'll appreciate.
Okay.
So there were these two scientists, they're women, and they're up in the North Pole doing climate change research. Okay.
Right.
So they're up there alone, the two of them, in basically a hut they're living in. Right. And they were going to come back through Norway, but COVID happened. And no more boats were coming up to pick them up. Wow. They were stuck. Up in, I am telling you, the living situation was about a walk-in closet. These two women. Okay. So they got their dog with them. So I was able to contact them because they had satellite internet that would come on, no electricity, some kind of satellite thing that only happened at certain times. I don't know. It was so bizarre.
Wow.
So when I was talking to them, they were stuck there, I'm like, I am talking to people who are doing research in the North Pole right now, in the Arctic Circle, with the polar bears walking around with the moose, and they're on snowmobiles 90 miles from any town. I think for me, I got I had to kind of take a minute when we hung up. I thought, I'm in heaven right now.
Wow.
It's so cool. And, they're doing all this really good stuff, and they continue to, and I'm following them, but they were taking all these different kind of samples of ice and stuff like that. But mostly I want to talk about how do you live with someone in that close quarters without, driving each other nuts.
Yeah, real odd couple type of situation.
Yeah.
That's like a NPR dream story.
It's a dream.
You should have shopped that one. You should have shopped that one, Nicole. Yeah.
Well, my dear friend sent it to me. It was a CNN story. And she said, hey, you got to check, because she knows me. She said, you got to check this out. And I've had other situations where people have said, hey, you should check these out. And I don't know if this has been your experience, but I am always surprised at how agreeable people are to be on your podcast, especially if they have a new documentary out.
Yeah, I've had that.
Or a new book. I'm like, really? You're gonna be on my pod? You understand that this is a pod, and I think it's like I interviewed Joan London, who may be, I don't know if you know.
The name sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, she's a journalist who's on Good Morning America for 20 years. Yeah. Right. Not my best interview, because she was so used to being interviewed that I could not get underneath the rehearsed responses. But I would say to your folks who are podcasting, don't be shy. Like, if you have something, you have to word it in a professional way, but I would just keep trying to get people who you can't even believe would ever be on your podcast. You might be surprised.
You'd be surprised who will show up, I had a similar situation where it was like, you ever get like that one guest where it just seems like it's pulling teeth?
Yeah.
This was like earlier, like when I started, and they're like, well, you can ask a little bit more questions. I'm like, I am asking questions. I realized that. Then I just had to say, like, basically, hold on for a minute. Why don't you just be yourself? Just relax, and we can have a good conversation. So it wasn't nothing that was like insulting between the two of us. It was like, well, I'm kind of starting out, and it seemed like you just practicing this thing. But how do you feel like sometimes when you do things like that, when you see people that you've interviewed some time ago and they end up being interviewed by some CNN journalist or news station, or you hear them on the radio or something like that?
I interviewed Celeste Headley. She's on NPR,
Mm-hmm.
and she's written 2 books, one on race and the other on slowing down.
Right.
She's like my idol. And when I hear her on NPR, I literally almost start crying.
Oh,
I
wow.
cannot believe it. I mean, I am such a admirer of hers. She's so freaking smart,
Yeah.
and her values are so aligned with me. I know this is true for you, Carl. I still can't believe it. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and I've had a lot of people who are super duper smarties at Harvard and all these, like people talking about what personality types help you age better and like writing the biggest books and the biggest research. I still sort of can't believe it. And my friends give me a hard time and be like, oh, do you still want to hang out with us? And I'm like, oh, please.
But remember, Nicole, you said in your book, you said at the end of the day, we're all human. So you might be sitting amongst people who, and I actually, I adapted that as well. That's how I approach a lot of these conversations. It's like, at the end of the day, I'm talking to a human being. You might have written books and did all of this wonderful stuff, and I'm just a guy with a microphone. But at the end of the day, we're all human, and I should be able to sit with you and still be myself.
That's what makes it good.
That's
what makes you a good interviewer and a good host.
Oh,
Nobody wants to hear a talking head.
No.
It's just not genuine. It doesn't make you feel, connected. It's not an emotional experience.
Yeah. This is the same type of conversation I would have with you if we were standing on the line in Walgreens or something,
That's
yeah.
And I would probably give you one of my cards.
Yeah, you. Way to go, Nicole. So yeah, I mean, it's just. But who are you listening to right now? What podcasts get you?
Well, that's an interesting question because I listen to people all day because I'm a psychotherapist. Mm-hmm. So what I do is walk in the woods with my dogs, and I'm really I'm planning a trip to bring some of my audience to Finland. Nice. Because it's supposedly the happiest country. Mm-hmm. And I'm really into like outdoor stuff and design and nature. So I'm kind of obsessed now with travel stuff for my audience, seeing the Northern Lights. The other thing I'm really interested in doing is walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain and bringing audience with me. That's kind of my new thing is adventure. So I'm spending a ton of time on watching documentaries, which way to go, how far can you walk, what do you do with your blisters? I'm like really a thrifty girl and I don't buy Netflix or other stuff like that. But but at the end of the day, I'm already kind of saturated with people's stories. And if I've done an interview, it takes energy. So I'm probably weird that way. Like I like to really have some quiet and some nature and make myself some dinner and just chill out. I'm not I listen to Terry Gross. I'll tell you, I've learned a lot about interviewing by watching people, David Letterman, even Jerry Seinfeld, Oprah, all these people. And it's been interesting for me because some of them like, what are you doing? You're not finished. She's telling you this thing and you're changing the subject.
You're changing the subject, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? A lot of people don't realize who was a very good interviewer and had a short-lived show? William Shatner.
Is that right?
Shatner's Raw Nerve. And the funny part is, it was, maybe in the early 2000s. And I remember the first time I seen his show, he had interviewed Lee Boyd Marvel, the DC sniper, the kid that was with him. And he had got the exclusive interview with him from prison, where he called in and he was basically explaining the situation. I believe he was telling Shatner that he didn't, he wasn't the only DC sniper out there. It was like more people out there, whatever. And so he kind of had more guests after that. So nobody really, like, you can't find it on YouTube or anything like that. But those were some of the best interviews, like the way that he engaged with his guests. And you thinking that, William Shatner is Captain Kirk. But,
yeah.
but he was very good at what he did.
That's so interesting because what I found, and I hope I don't get hate mail for this, but David Letterman has been just like talking about him and his kid. And he had Kanye on and he had all these huge names on. And I'm like, I don't know if he's quite with them. He seemed to be often coming in with his own agenda. And I didn't really, the person I was surprised I thought was a good interviewer was Jerry Seinfeld on the Comedians in Cars.
Right.
I thought he had a really nice way with his guests. He seemed to be respectful and he, I'm not a bigger Seinfeld fan than anyone else, but I was like, this guy is kind of, he had his own style, and I think people really opened up to him.
You're a New Yorker, and you're not a big Seinfeld fan.
Well, I like Seinfeld. I mean, I have a Jewish grandmother, and we spent time in Brooklyn, but but I'm not a crazy Seinfeld person. I'm just a regular Seinfeld.
Seinfeld, and laugh like I never watched it ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's my relaxing show. Some people have shows they just relax to.
Yeah,
that's my relaxing show. Some people say the Golden Girls. Some people say, I'm not a Friends fan. That's, but people say, I watch Friends. That's my relaxing show.
Do you think you have to be a New Yorker to get some of the humor?
Yes.
You do?
Because a lot of people outside of New York do not get Seinfeld. Do not get it.
But I don't know but it's funny because I have friends that are not Jewish who don't get it either. Right. Like the parents are so classic, and the grandmother, oh my God, my grandmother could have been on that show.
Yeah, and it's like, if you're not, not from New York, and so I found a lot of people outside of New York like Friends, and you gotta make a choice.
I see.
You gotta make a choice. Yeah. So you say you were from, you spent some time in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, my grandmother lived in Brooklyn in near Sheepshead Bay.
Oh, okay.
So I spent time down, there in the brownstones in the back, and and I grew up downstate, and then I moved actually up for school for college to New England, and I've been kind of in this Northeast area ever since.
Have you been to the city lately? You've been back to Brooklyn?
I haven't been for a while.
It's changed a lot, Nicole.
Has it? I know it's so fancy now.
Yeah. Like, I go back to my old neighborhood, and I'm from Crown Heights, and it's like some of the stuff you see this would have never happened.
Like, tell me
30,
what
40
you mean.
years. Like, you see people outside, you know how they have like the brownstones and you have the little gates there, the little courtyard. They're like wine and cheesing it in the middle of the night. And I remember this neighborhood the way it used to be. I was like, wow, things have changed. Like, the neighborhood corner store has now become some trendy little eatery. Wow. All of the corner stores, just about, depending on where you're at, have become like organic.
Wow.
Now listen, gentrification has its place. Change is good if it's done right.
But is it a little too precious?
I think it got to the point where the identity and the culture of certain neighborhoods have changed, where you kind of wiped it out completely. And I think that's where the biggest issue comes at with that.
When I was growing up, it was all Russian Jews there.
Yeah.
They were immigrants, and many of them had numbers tattooed.
Mm-hmm.
They were from the camps.
Right.
So no, I know about Park Slope, and I know about like all this stuff, but I have not been down there, and I'm kind of afraid to. I think I'm intimidated.
It's like Captain America coming up the ice. You're just looking around like, what in the world happened? And like I went to school in Park Slope. I went to John Jay High School. Shout out to John Jay. I got a point there. Now, the only problem with that is they changed the name of the school completely. So, one day I was just there and I'm, with my brother and my nephew and my daughter. And I'm like, oh, well, it's a Saturday. We decided to just go in the old neighborhood. And so right now I live in Delaware. So we take the travel up there and just walked around the area, and the school just happened to be open. It's summertime. So I said, hey, you guys want to see where we went to school at? I said, yeah, why not? We're walking around in the school, and there was a security guard there who apparently must have been there when I was there, because I was like the last one to graduate out of the school. And so, out of my family, I should say. And so he's showing us around, and it's like now they have like 2 floors. One is like law and science or something like that. They have like a whole thing. And he was saying, well, the difference now is when you went here, everything was pretty much melted together. There was no big funding going on there. Now, most of the people who live there, the kids go to the school. They're like doctors and lawyers and everything. And they, like put money into the school. And so I'm like, wow, this is deep, because I remember where this was not like this and that wasn't like this. And the school looks completely different. And it leaves you scratching your head like, where was all this funding when we were here? And would things have turned out different if we had that funding?
Oh, wow.
Which is a whole completely different topic that we can discuss one day.
Oh, boy. It's so interesting because I lived in Syracuse now for 25 years, and it is really like Syracuse City, and then you drive 20 minutes, like what planet am I on? It just could not be more different, and you cannot ignore the difference, and the difference in opportunities and privilege. You'd have to be blind not to see how profound the differences are.
There's an audio podcast called Nice White Families, and they actually did a profile that had my old school on there. And they were talking about how basically the school was somewhat still segregated. Rich kids, kids without money, all going to the same school. So imagine having this, 2 volleyball teams. One is more funded than the other.
Wow.
When you get a chance to see it, the same place. And so because the schools are divided, with different sections of the school for different subjects, it's like, all right, so these kids go here. These kids go, say, upstairs. The kids upstairs have more money than the kids downstairs. So they will get better books, better technology, things like that.
That's right in your face.
Right in your face. The kids were the students got together and said, this isn't fair. Rich kids, underprivileged kids got together and said, this isn't fair. We want to be on the same volleyball team. We want to be on the same basketball team. Some people agreed, some people didn't. But what happens is they all ended up getting on. I don't want to ruin it, but I suggest that anybody out there listens to this. This is a very good profile and disparity. And so they ended up getting on the same team. But please check that out if you get a chance.
It sounds fascinating. It's just, that's the kind of stuff I love. Now, what's it called? Nice White Families?
Yes. And it really hit because I'm like, yeah, I went to school here.
That's crazy.
My father went to school here. So it's like, wow. And it's something that you already knew was going on. But I guess because we just went through it, it was normal to us, but yeah, different topic for a different time, Nicole. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. All right. So before we get ready to wrap up, because I don't want to go past your normal sweet spot, which we did. This conversation was too good. was too good to pass up. So, can you please let our listeners know about the Zestful Agent podcast, where we can reach you at your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
You know, how they can reach out to you? Can you let us know?
Sure. It's easy. Zestfulaging.com is my brand new shiny website. I have some courses on there too. I might do something on podcasting, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay.
But it's more stuff like mindful eating, zestful aging, and I do a decluttering thing. So yeah, Zestful Aging will get you everywhere. I have a YouTube channel where I introduce my guests. I tell you a little bit inside stuff about them. I try to do like a bit of a tip about aging well. Yeah, and please, I love hearing from my audience, and you can reach me through the website Zestful Aging, or you can get to me at zestfulaging@gmail.com. And I always love to hear people's reactions of what they want to hear more of, and maybe what they want to hear less of.
Are you on any of the socials, like the Instagram?
I am. I'm kind of big in. I've done that, and that's another conversation for another time. I was really getting. How shall I say? Burnout isn't exactly the right word, but I didn't feel like that was I know this is going to sound weird, but not a great use of my energy. I mean, I have a Facebook channel, but it's not really terribly active. And the Instagram I kind of play with. I'm mostly on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of my people hang out, I guess.
Yeah.
But the social stuff has been hard for me. I've really not enjoyed trying to figure out the algorithms of these things that change. People find me through word of mouth and through Google and stuff. And I'm sure I'm saying things that people are like, oh my goodness, you don't know what you're talking about.
But listen, I'll give you a tip about the Instagram thing off air. I'll tell you off air.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I would sit there, for hours and post, and I'm tagging and I'm hashtagging. What I do is I give people their links. I talk about it. I put it on LinkedIn. It goes also on the radio. And I guess that's all I really want to do right now. I got other stuff I want to do.
Can you promote your station?
Yeah, WCNY. It's a 91.3 in Syracuse. It's actually a classical music station, but they do have podcasts, and you'll find me in the community FM section, and they've been advertising it a lot, so they make it easy to get to.
So yeah, you're picking up steam, and so I wanted to leave you with this before we really get off. You say you're going to do a lot of traveling. Right? Here's what I'm pitching to you.
Pitch me, yeah.
Check this out.
Okay.
You get you a camera.
Yeah.
You go to these spots, and you do your walkthroughs or whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah.
You have your people with you. We call it Zestful Adventures.
Zestful Adventures?
Zestful Agent Adventures.
Yeah, I love it.
Separates the two brands there.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about that. And that's what I'm sort of working with and playing with. And here's the last piece is like, I really only want to do something that feels good and that's fun. And I just feel like life's too short to be like, oh, what does Facebook need from me to get my, And so that's why I'm doing the travel stuff. It gives me like a springboard to say, hey, everyone, come with me to Finland. It's going to be cold, but really cool, fun and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I am going to try to develop that idea.
Yeah, I mean, you can switch the name around or whatever.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Do some Python hunting. I know you're pretty good at. I know about the Python hunting. Yes, man. I do.
That was fabulous. I forgot about Donna Khalil. They made a documentary about her.
Python hunting. Wow.
That was middle of the night. You're up there with headlights on the back of the pickup truck. There are birds flying over you. It was wild.
What do you do with the python once you catch it?
They're invasive species, and she shoots them, but she eats the liver.
Yikes. Any nutritional value there? Or?
I guess. She's a really interesting woman. Yeah, she makes a lot of stuff with the python skin.
Yeah.
But they're nasty characters, man. They are not fooling around. I mean, they're constrictors, but they also have teeth. So,
well, listen, the next time you go python hunt, please
I'll give you a call.
Please
Carl.
do. Like, hey, look at what I'm doing. Just make me feel like I'm not doing anything. Nicole.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful to have you on.
Oh, thanks. It was a lot of fun.
It was definitely. Am I too young to be on? Am I too young to be on the Zestful Agent podcast?
No, you're not too young. But we do have a waiting list, so we're going to have to put you on the waiting list. I got to take some time off. My editor's going to strangle me.
Look, as long as I'm in a number, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. All right. Hey, this was beautiful. You hang on for a minute. All right. I'm going to tell you something. All right.
Yeah.
So listen, the Only One Mic podcast is available on all major platforms that you stream your podcast on. Also, check out our Only One Mic podcast YouTube channel. Catch up on the past and the current episodes, and please don't forget to rate the show and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to get in contact with the Only One Mic podcast, you can reach us via Instagram and Twitter at the Only One Mic P1, Facebook and LinkedIn at the Only One Mic podcast, and also you can reach us by email at the onlyonemic00@gmail.com. There you can leave your comments. Also, I wanted to also say, please pick up Not Just Chatting, How to Become a Master Podcast Interviewer by Nicole Christina. All right. And we thank you again for your time. And we encourage you, please, to speak your truth quietly and clearly and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, because they too have their story to tell. So like I always tell them, Nicole, listen to this. So until next time, please keep in mind that I never had to run from the Ku Klux Klan, so I shouldn't have to run from a black man. Peace.